Hey, Sarah.
Hey, I'm trying to get the lighting right in here. Ugh.
I've been hearing this banging and
Oh, sorry.
I thought you were under construction over there.
I have been that too. And I'm like living in fear, like when dogs are going to run in here.
We're all used to that.
Sorry.
So have you been, dear?
We're hanging in. How about you?
Same here. It's just getting more and more
Awful.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I thought it was as bad as it was going
no,
to be, and then it wasn't.
no. And I'm afraid to even say that now because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this, I mean, the racial unrest and the peeling back now of this problem, another flashlight yet again on the problems that exist has this has just been unbelievable.
Well, hopefully it'll marshal people together. You know, we need policy, we need programs, we need implementation.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I think they're already recording, so everything we say.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, it's okay. I proudly say. It's a mess. Got to figure it out.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. I think Stacy was planning on signing on early too.
Yeah, that's why I did. I just wanted to check the sound and the light.
Yeah, you look great.
Oh. Well, the other night I ended up sitting in here and all of a sudden I realized like it had gotten completely dark and I looked like something from like, you know, Apocalypse Now or something, like broadcasting from a bunker somewhere. So now I'm trying to be more.
You know, I'm such a voyeur. You know, all these reporters are announcing from home, and I'm like,
yeah. Oh, me too. Oh, that's exactly what I do. I'm like, where does she live? And there's one reporter that has like the perfect setup. I think she's on maybe CBS or NBC, I can't remember, but she always has like a fire going and she looks like she's just in this little, like, I don't know, like you want to live at her house. Like the last few months, just always like not a fake fire, like a crackling fire next to her in the fireplace. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Of course, Anderson Cooper looks like he lives in Downton Abbey.
I know. See, that's what I'm saying. Like all of them, you're like, wait,
but he's
where is that?
Son, the man's a
yes, exactly, exactly. I know. So it is kind of fun to see. I have a friend who's starting a business where he stages, kind of like he'll stage your office or wherever so that you can then just either be in it or just take a photo of it. So just to help him out, because he's a friend of mine and he's here from New York because his entire way of life completely crashed. And so he's done a lot of, he was doing like the windows for Barney's and, you know, all those places. So, so I'm going to get him to come to the collaboratory office and do it. and then take a photo of it so I can use it as my virtual background. He's having to bring everything in because I don't have anything, interesting enough. He's just bringing in props.
Well, I think the work environment being designed is really smart. When I opened an outpatient practice, I picked all the furniture. We had professional people pick the paintings. We had people
Yeah.
stage everything, and I told the
Yeah.
staff, "This is your file cabinet. Put
Yes.
whatever you want in it."
Yeah, same. That's what we did when we, yes.
The
yes,
rest stays untouched because
Yeah.
it's like people coming to visit a home. You don't
Yeah.
want other people's stuff when you're coming to
No,
a personal,
right.
So we said, no, keep the pictures at home,
Yeah, same. We did that at Collaboratory too. But I was noticing when I was in there the other day, just kind of walking around with like nobody being there and just looking. And I thought to myself, okay, it's time. When we moved, we did a temporary move between our previous offices and moving into the new space. And so I purposely moved to a temporary office for about 6 weeks. And it was very small. And I told everybody they could only take 2 boxes with them to the temporary office. And so that helped a lot by the time we moved into the permanent space, because they already had to scale it way down. Because I knew if we waited to just make the move from the previous office to the new office, human nature is you wait till the last second and then you don't do a really good job of sorting. You just, throw it all in and the movers take it over. So getting them down to 2 boxes was hysterical. There were those 2 like copy paper size boxes, and people were like piling it above the lid and trying to tape it. It was so funny to watch how different people approached 2 boxes of stuff.
Hi, Stacy. We're just killing time while we were.
Hey, hey, Stacy.
Hi. Mary, I logged in using the information that Tanya gave me, but I don't see the functionality of,
So if you move your mouse to the bottom of the black screen, it should show up.
the functionality of making you a co-host.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay. The other thing I can't seem to do is mute all. I can mute.
That could be a problem.
I can mute me. So what I did is I logged into Zoom, logged into the website, and then hit join meeting. Should I have done something different?
Let me sign on and play with it. Hold
Okay.
on.
I should have done it. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, how are you?
Okay.
Getting to be long, right? This will work harder these days.
But I'm glad to be here with you guys tonight.
We're a nice distraction.
You are nice to see. Good to be with everybody.
How's the family?
Everybody's doing their thing. I have a 19-year-old at home that's just going stir crazy. He's been home since college sent him home, and
Yeah, I have a high school senior.
that hurts my heart. I feel so bad. I felt so
It's
bad
been
for
a
them.
little bit tough. I mean, the good news is he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So
Right.
Whatever. He's moving on. He's getting ready for college. And
I can't believe one of yours is college. I can't believe that.
I still have one in elementary and one starting middle school. Look at
Yeah.
those sharks. I love it.
Very cool.
I change my background every day.
Yeah, just to keep life interesting.
Yeah, but it's been fun, Sarah, to sort of employ the college access skills and knowledge.
Yes, exactly.
with my kids.
Exactly.
And there were times, there was probably about a good 2-year period where he was like, he wanted to hear nothing from me. And I was like, this is what I do for a living. Listen to your mom. And we took a ride up to go tour school. And on the way there, I mean, I'm telling you, he like fought me all the way, and we're sitting shoulder to shoulder because, boys, you can't talk to them straight
Right.
on. And
Right.
I'm telling him, asking him what he wants to do. And then I guess something triggered where he was like, oh, yeah, mom knows what she's talking about.
Hey, at least he got there. That's pretty good. Sometimes they never
Yeah.
acknowledge that. So way to go.
Hi, Fran. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great.
We're having quite a storm down here at the
Oh,
moment,
no.
but it
And
will
where are
pass.
you? Where are you, Fran?
Naples.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about to
bad.
storm here later on.
Coming your way, huh?
Yes. It stormed last night. So,
Yeah. We've been getting them about every other day.
yeah. June 1st kicks off hurricane season, and now we're having the rain
Oh.
showers every afternoon.
Here we are, yeah.
Like
We've really needed the rain down here. I don't know about you guys, but
Yes,
happy.
my orchids are happy, Fran.
good for you.
Hey, Fran.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Leanne.
Hi, Mary.
So Stacy, I didn't see it either. I wonder if Tanya signed in before. I don't know.
You want me to jump off and jump back in? Let me just try it one more time.
I don't think that'll help because that's what I did offline to try and do, and it doesn't. It just gives me the option of joining the meeting.
They say the top skill of a leader is adaptability, so we're going to put all our members
Yeah.
to the test.
Yes.
There you go. Are some people having trouble getting in?
No, it's
Oh, we're having trouble as hosts getting the mute all. Somehow our host controls aren't showing up.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just have to mute ourselves? Is that what you'd like,
Exactly.
Mary?
But we can wait. We'll mute ourselves at the beginning.
Yeah, we can talk now.
Hi, Karen.
Hello, hello. Hi.
Hey, Janice. Hi, Karen.
Hello, hello. I tried to figure out how to get the lighting right in my little corner here in the house. So hard.
It is hard.
Well,
Right.
if you
Karen, I agree with you. It's like, do I want to show more of my wrinkles, my pores, or
Well, and I
so
found
Karen,
that
Karen, you're backlit, so that's going to put your face. If you want photographers to do it. So I don't know if there's any way that you can turn it away from that beautiful sliding glass, or if you can put a curtain across the sliding glass, because that'll lighten up your face.
Yeah, there is no curtain on that
Yeah.
door. So
I wouldn't put a curtain if I had a beautiful view like that. Out the way.
Does everybody know about the hack on Zoom where you can turn on improve my appearance?
no?
It's like a
No.
filter.
I
You think
tried
I'm
it.
looking
No.
especially good.
Sarah, how do you do that?
iPhone 10, the soft focus.
It's I think it's under more in let's see, where do you find it? No, that's not it. Hang on a minute.
This just might be the best outcome from this webinar. Is
Yeah.
I agree.
And Mary, while Sarah's looking for that, Arabelle's my guest. She's on. Arabelle.
Hi, Arabelle. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, and this is Lee. I'm on.
Hey, Lee.
Hi, Mary.
For some reason, it's not coming up in this. I think when you log into your own, like when you're the host maybe, or the meet, because it usually comes up, for some reason it's not coming up in,
What's it called, Sarah?
it's just one of the little sliders that's improve my appearance. So check your meeting settings or your virtual background. It actually says improve my appearance, and it does a filter.
No way.
Really? Where?
Yeah. Look at me. I look 20 times better than I would if I had it off. I promise.
You know where it is? It's let me see.
Oh, it's
in
called
the
touch
stop
up my appearance.
video in that arrow up, but it's not.
But
I
I,
just did it.
but
Okay.
I do believe there's a device, Sarah, you have to purchase and click onto your computer and it put through a port.
oh, mine
That's
just
how it was
disappeared.
explained to me.
Oh, I don't know.
I-
Mine I just slid over one of the things,
Oh, I
from
see.
white
It's
to
under-
green. Where is it?
It's under, if you go to that stop video icon on the right side, there's a caret. You go to there, and under video, you look under my video, and this is mirror my video or touch up my appearance.
That's
So
it. Touch
I'm
up
gonna
my
click
appearance.
on, and I don't know what that does. So do I look like one of the sharks? I don't know. I just clicked on. I
When
don't
you
know.
look on,
Yeah.
on shop video, you click on that?
I
Yeah.
clicked on it, but I am I supposed to see a difference? I have less wrinkles. Great.
Yes, you look amazing.
Wow. So
Maybe
I'm
it's
not,
just
I'm not finding
psychological.
this.
I can't
I look
find
like
it on my
Sarah
thing
now.
right
I love it.
All right.
I don't think it did any good for me.
I don't listen. I think it's just psychological, right? Like they just put that on there, and suddenly you just think you look so much better.
Hi,
That's
Jessica. Welcome. Welcome,
Thank you.
Chris.
I
We'll wait
almost
just
had
another minute. A few more people are joining us.
fantastic.
We
Hi,
were
Chris.
laughing about how there's this function in Zoom that there's like a slide bar that says improve my appearance. And if you slide it, I guess it's like a soft filter that takes away.
Really?
So,
10 years,
so
Sarah, you're
my
right.
team, we had a big debate whether we should tell people that hack or keep it secret.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
why
I've
share
never heard of that. Where do you find that?
I already probed that deeply.
I'll send out instructions to everybody after we get off the Zoom.
Yes.
That's
yes.
great.
Don't expect too
Thank you.
much because it's yeah.
We should try it, like turn it off and on and see if anybody can
Right.
actually.
All right, mine is on. Let's see.
Let's see.
All right.
I just turned right. I turned mine on.
I
So
can do
Jessica,
that.
it's under your bottom left screen. There's a stop video icon. There's a caret next to it. Click on that caret and go to video settings. If you go to video settings, you have video, and then in the top it says my video, enable HD, mirror my video, or touch up my appearance.
Don't talk so
Click on
fast.
touch up my appearance.
Oh
After
my
audio
goodness.
settings?
No, it's under video. Under Janice, it's under video.
Got it.
Video, and then
All right.
video, it has enable.
Yeah.
It says enable HD, mirror my video, touch up my appearance.
I am now enhanced.
Oh,
Yes.
I just clicked.
It's
Okay,
fine,
let's
too.
see what
So
happens.
Sarah, what happens if I click on it 3 times? It's kind of like if you put in our face.
Better.
Do I look any better?
It goes on and off.
All right, ladies, we're transitioning into a IWF happy hour instead of an actual serious webinar.
Don't tell anyone else,
So
okay?
Stacy, during Q&A, and when Sarah's not, if she's thinking about the answer, she's really not thinking, she's touching up her appearance.
That's right.
Let's keep it a secret with IWF, okay? Don't tell anyone else.
Oh, that's
Free makeovers with the webinar.
I think
Ooh.
we are close to our full attendance, and just to make sure we can get done within the hour, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. But really quick, just so that I can tell, I think I've got everybody's name here, but there's someone calling in from the last 4 numbers are 3626. Can you just tell me who this is, and I'll rename
Yeah.
your.
Hey, Stacy, it's Kathy Collins.
Oh, hi.
Hey.
Thanks for joining. Oops, hold on. And Linda, great to see you. It's been a little while. Linda and I are leadership forward.
It has. I just want to go on record, there's absolutely no difference between being enhanced or not being enhanced. That's how far over the hill I am.
Well, let me get us started with a little bit of housekeeping because these Zoom calls are always a little bit challenging. We were not able to figure out, and forgive me because this is the only second time I've done this, how to mute everybody. So as we get started, I'd just like to ask everybody to mute themselves just so that there aren't any distracting noises in the back while our presenters are presenting. And we're going to, at the bottom of your screen, we're going to use the chat function if you want to raise up questions. So we're going to go through the 2 presentations, and then I'm going to facilitate a few questions, and then I'll open it up to the group for any questions from our audience participants. I guess I should have started. Oh, Mary.
If I could just make a couple announcements before we get rolling.
Sure.
I wanted to let everyone know that these Zooms have been, I've just been getting marvelous feedback on them. We've done some new member events, we've done cocktails, we've done serious presentations such as this one, and people are really enjoying it because we get to see people from all the areas. You know, we couldn't ask Linda Overhouse to drive up 2 or 3 hours so we could see her all the way. So I think they're going well. June 8th, Beth Godhelp is hosting another cocktail at 5:30. I encourage you to just go online and sign up, or let Tanya know you'd like to do it. And then on June 18th, a very special program, which is a behind the scenes with the Leadership Fellows globally. We fund as a global IWF anywhere between 25, this year's the largest, 38 young women who are nominated by forums and who are sponsored either by their companies or by forums. And in an unprecedented year, 38 were chosen. 2 of them were from our area because we fundraised so that these nonprofit, so one nonprofit leader would be able to go, Melissa Larkin Skinner from Centerstone Behavioral Health, and then Hosanna Fiber also. And both of them, and Linda Overhouse was also nominated. So we got 2 of them in, which is like a miracle. Too bad we didn't get 3 because we were ready for that. And so Hosanna and Melissa are going to talk about their experience. It's being moderated by Alex Armstrong, who is one of the founders, and also Carol Cisco, whose mother was a founder, Jean. So we're going to get the behind the scenes on how it all came about. It has something to do with Russia. I'm just saying, they were in Russia when they cooked up this idea. And then they're going to let the fellows talk about their experience. So you get the behind the scenes. And I know, Linda, you'll be really curious to hear what they're going through. It's a tough year for them because they're going to get stretched an extra year in order to finish everything with the shutdown. So I encourage you, give us feedback on these programs, suggest programs, and do sign up for them. And I know Lucy has several more in queue. I don't think they're up yet, but they will be soon.
What date is the fellows? I'm sorry,
That
Mary.
is June 18th.
18th, thank you.
At 5:30.
Okay, thanks.
And all of these are about an hour because that's as long as anybody can stand Zooming with a good heart.
Right, and in the beginning of July, actually Janice Darrow is doing one. Janice, do you want to just tell them what you're doing?
Janice, you're on mute, hon.
It's co-hosted by Ann Doyle, who's the president of the IWF Michigan, who many of you may know. She's an author, podcast host, and former elected official for the Michigan legislature, and myself. And just to give you some context, Ann's expertise is different generational women's leadership, but it is women's leadership. And my interest, of course, is women's leadership as well, although I focus on millennials and baby boomers. Anyway, we've put our heads together and our thoughts, and the program will be on July 6th, and it will be on what the pandemic has brought out from our women leaders. You've read a lot domestically about the 5 countries that have been so successful that have had women leaders. We're going to focus on some of the domestic leaders that we have in this country, and found some good reading material. There's a great piece that was done about this in the Harvard Business Review. So we've given you the site for those of you who'll sit in on. It's a short excerpt, and then some fun stuff that Saturday Night Live does. We want to make this fun. So we found something in Saturday Night Live as well to show.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you both for sharing those upcoming programs. Leon?
Sorry, just FYI, because several members are from Sarasota. I just want to kind of give you some weird news. I just got informed, try to stay away from downtown Sarasota. There might be some violent protests. Something has happened already. So I just wanted to go. I just want to say that because Kathleen, you might be on Longboat, and I just want to let you know that. So be very, very careful. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you for that. It's a weird time to sort of try and pretend like everything's normal and then recognize that it's 100% not. So, appreciate everybody's, maybe we can offer a little distraction for the next 50 minutes or so around this, around the topic that we're going to share today. So let me kick off by saying I'm Stacy Beyer. I'm Vice President of the Tampa area, and been a member of IWF probably for 3 or 4 years. In fact, Sarah Owen is one of the people who recommended me way back in the day. And I'm so happy to have her, and being joined by Jessica Muroff, who is one of our newest members. I think she might be like 3 weeks in or so into her membership in the Suncoast IWF. Jessica is a recent addition as the CEO of the Suncoast United Way, and Sarah Owen is a long-standing member and CEO of the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. The board was having a conversation just a few weeks ago talking about, different webinar topics, and I had been on a couple of webinars with Jessica and knew the reach of Sarah and some of the conversations that they would be having in their roles with nonprofits to understand how nonprofits are being impacted by this, how they're reacting to COVID-19, where they're seeing critical needs, and sort of how they're pivoting in their work. And I thought it was a good topic to bring to the IWF group. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have Jessica start off with kind of a short presentation, and then Sarah will follow her, and then we'll do a couple of questions facilitated by me, and then we'll open it up to the group where we'll use the chat function to try and facilitate questions. I think I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. Are you ready?
Unmute myself. You would think I'm in like 12 Zooms a day that I would know how to be prepared for that. Good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here, and I can't. Yes, it's brand new to me, and to be a part of this, and I'm so excited to see all your faces. And thank you for allowing me to share our work. I think it's really important, and I'm thrilled to be doing this with Sarah this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it says disabled. Stacy, I don't know if you can enable that. Thank you. Got it. Can you see that okay? Awesome. Okay. So when this crisis hit, I was, hold on. I was brand new to my position at United Way. I started last November. So there's nothing like being a brand new CEO to an organization and then have to embrace how to respond to a global pandemic. And, in any type of crisis, I think the most important thing you can do is to react and respond, not even react, respond quickly and provide leadership and transparency. And especially access to resources. So that's immediately what we did. We created our COVID-19 response and recovery fund, and as well as our coronavirus assistance center that had a one-stop reference page for information and links and resources for all of the 5 counties that we serve, and continue to promote this broadly throughout the community in radio ads that we got for free, billboard ads that we got donated to us, so much to raise the awareness around 211 and all of the supports for our community, as well as the need to raise funds in response to the crisis. When we look at why does it do this? When we look at the impact and the immediate response to the crisis, when you look at our 211 calls, you can see the bottom yellow line here, and the weeks that it is rolling. COVID was definitely on people's minds, but the larger impact wasn't the health crisis; it was the economic crisis, as you all know, that really impacted families across our region. So, high level of concern around financial stability and, housing, utilities, support, food, unemployment. And so you can see over on the other side here, as far as Google searches and how they picked up across our region, and people looking for unemployment benefits, food banks, and rent assistance. So, you know, a crisis hit us and we responded quickly, and so did our community. We had a lot of tremendous supporters across the region. We raised over $1.6 million in an 8-week time frame, and we deployed those resources back out to the community immediately. 100% of the funds went directly to helping those across the community, and you can see on this slide here where those supports went. Really the biggest need in the short term and the immediate response to this crisis was food, of course, but then housing, shelter, financial stability, some essential care essential worker child care, healthcare and mental health supports. But $1.4 million has been allocated and sent back out into our community, supporting 70 agencies, nearly 1 million individuals, and representing 340 households. The other thing that we did was convening our nonprofit agency partners on a regular basis. And these convening phone calls really helped us to understand what their needs were and where we can make critical collaboration points. And I'll give you just one for example. 211 was on a call with YMCA of the Suncoast, and they were talking about their essential childcare offerings. And Crisis Center was like, well, we have 211 operators that are essential workers, and so that shifted their whole paradigm of not just being first responders, but essential workers. And we're able to offer some supports to them. And that's just one small example of the connections and the dialogue that's happening between our nonprofit partners, because they are serving on the front line and supporting families in response to this crisis, and making these connections, providing them support for how to navigate the PPP process, for how to support one another, how to promote our services. These calls have been a really rich opportunity to be sure that we're staying on top of their issues and concerns, and also being able to fund some of their needs in these immediate terms, because many of these nonprofits, the Nonprofit Leadership Center did a survey in late March for nonprofits in the Tampa Bay region, and 80% of them had to cancel fundraising events, of course, over the course of the coming months. And that's going to have a pretty significant financial impact in their ability to deliver on their services. So I'm going to just run through some slides because I don't want to take up too much time. One of the things that we released in the middle of this crisis in early May was our ALICE report. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with United Way's ALICE report. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And what COVID-19, what it was the crisis that all of these families who were already living in a fragile state economically, was the crisis that came and hit them and has completely knocked them off course. And so this crisis exacerbated and has brought to the forefront and spotlight of how many people across our state were already living paycheck to paycheck and not being able to have the financial stability to weather a storm like this. So 43% of the households in the region struggle to pay for the most basic needs, such as housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, and technology. 43%, it's very significant. 46% of households statewide face the same financial challenges. If you look here, this just gives you in Florida, ALICE in Florida, the federal poverty level for Florida has risen, slightly since 2007, and it's roughly flat at 13%. ALICE, however, increased from 22% in 2007 to 33% in 2018. A large number of households struggling before the pandemic explain why this impact is so severe, and especially in Florida, given the industries that were impacted. This is just a high-level review of the groups that are more likely to be ALICE. You can see across our Hispanic families, Black, under 25-year-olds, single female headed with children, and all households here. So you can see some of our neighbors are disproportionately impacted with ALICE and a part of our ALICE threshold, or living below our ALICE threshold. The bare minimum budget, how all of this is calculated is ALICE is a household survival budget, and that really only includes taxes, technology, you know, the cost of a basic cell phone, healthcare, transportation, food, childcare, and housing. And you can see on this chart here where retail, it just is just an example of retail sales wages on average is $11 an hour, a household survival budget for one adult, a senior survival budget, and a household survival budget for a family of 4. The lines you can see here are the federal CARES Act stimulus checks that were received. But it really is a temporary stopgap to what is going to be a more long-term and major problem for these families. You know, Alice really keeps our economy running. You know, they are helping us in our infrastructure. They help educate and care for our workforce. The COVID-19 impact is just critical. Many nurturer jobs are critical now, and those workers are vulnerable to illness. And many infrastructure jobs are on hold and will take time to ramp back up. And so while we're still in crisis mode right now, and that, you know, when you look at our food banks and others who are responding to this, we are still very much in crisis mode. We haven't yet, you know, really kind of stepped into recovery. And we feel like this will peak sometime in the fall when it comes to, as far as the economic crisis and the impacts to our families. And it will take time for these families to, you know, to really recover from all of this. And I'm sure many of you have seen and understand the benefits toward moving to equity, and in light of today's world and everything that we are experiencing right now, I think this conversation couldn't be more important now than ever. And, you know, if we really do have equity and have a living wage for our Alice families, the impact to our Florida GDP is quite significant. So, you know, benefits to sufficient income, you know, truly that safety of having a, you know, affordable, safe housing, access to childcare, quality healthcare, being able to save, reliable transportation, adequate food, all of these things, and reliable technology. And with, you know, what COVID has taught us in the digital divide and making sure that all of our families have adequate access to digital resources is really critically important. And this is really, we need to be able to, you know, to look at all of this comprehensively to elevate so many families across our region. This is a really busy slide, but I just want, this just kind of further illustrates the impact from disaster to recovery and, you know, mapping out, you know, COVID-19 deaths projected, are the emotional index, you know, as far as the phases of the disaster, as well as the, you know, the unemployment numbers. And this is not real time. We're working to get that, but the impacts are going to really be long-term. You can see that this spans out over a couple of years. So what is United Way doing to respond to all of this? We're investing $7.6 million within the next month back into our community for really long-term projects and programs that support financial stability, early education, and youth success. We are putting over $500,000 into summer programs with our partners who are abiding by CDC guidelines for safety, but providing that summer care for families who really need it. And then, of course, our partnership with 211 and almost $200,000 in continued emergency funding support. We know that our nonprofit partners need us now more than ever, and we're going to continue to convene and support them. But this is our first step to making sure that they can still rely on us as a key partner. Our focus areas, I'm not going to get into the details because I want to transition over to Sarah, and I can certainly answer any questions that you all may have. And I can get into the more details around our focus in early literacy, financial stability, and youth success, and how we mobilize volunteers. This is something that will continue to be our focus in the coming months. So I am going to turn things back over to Stacy for Sarah. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that, that overview and all the work that you're doing in the region. I don't know how many people know, but the United Way Suncoast is in Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and DeSoto counties. So it's quite the reach. And it was one of the reasons why it was a perfect pair up with Sarah, because then we cover even farther south. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you need me to do your slides, or are you going to manage them? You need to unmute yourself.
There we go. I will share screen. If I have a technical problem, you can take over.
Perfect.
Hold on a second. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I am so happy that we were able for the first bit here to focus on the end user, right? The people that are residents, our neighbors, the people that we know on an individual level are suffering. And, you know, anytime we're dealing with anything so unprecedented as this, that we understand that there are individual people behind every single one of those numbers, right? Like, there are people we know, they could be people we don't know, but those statistics really represent suffering. And the team of the Community Foundation has really kind of used this time maybe to go up 30,000 feet from there. And we've been doing flash polls every couple weeks because we really want to understand what's going on in the nonprofit ecosystem. And we believe that COVID is shining a light on vulnerability within the nonprofit system as a whole, right? Like, things that nonprofits are going through right now in their challenges have not come as a result of COVID. We really believe that a lot of these challenges are there because there are two different rule books for the nonprofit and for-profit world. And we set things up to make nonprofits vulnerable in this way. And let's face it, every one of those stats about Alice, about focus areas, about those individual residents, for the most part, are going to be dealt with by these nonprofit organizations. And I was really excited tonight to see the list of participants, because as I was scrolling through, I know that I think every single person on this call has either led a nonprofit organization and been an executive in the nonprofit world at some point in their career, or served on a board, led a board, been the president of the board of a nonprofit. And every single one of you are generous both in spirit and in action. And so I know that you contribute to nonprofit organizations. So I think there's a lot of different ways for us to approach this in those roles. And I kind of want you to imagine for a moment what hat you're wearing right now out of those that I listed. You know, are you leading a nonprofit organization? Are you serving on the board, leading a board? Are you a donor? You know, are you an interested party? Because I think that this issue speaks to every single one of those, but it's going to take a more collective effort of looking at this from all these different perspectives. A lot of times when I talk to nonprofit leaders, they'll say to me, well, I get this, but I don't think my board does, or I get this, but I don't think my donors do. And so the Community Foundation is really stepping more at this time into our advocacy role for the nonprofit ecosystem in our region. And a big part of these flash polls are really to kind of determine where these nonprofits sit in this time, particularly when it comes to financial resources. So in these flash polls, this is just I pulled out a few snapshots from one of the more recent flash polls. Again, these aren't full surveys. These are for us to get the pulse of our nonprofit ecosystem so that we can design things along with dollars that really will help boost them. But I thought it was important to first look at the range that I'm kind of talking about today, because I think the snapshot is the same in a lot of communities. We have over 3,000 nonprofit organizations in our region, but you know, look at the percentage whose annual budgets are under $250,000, and look at the larger organizations that are in that 25 to 50 million. Just kind of orient yourself there. You can see that the majority of the people we talked to in this poll were either under 250 in their total budget to, you know, 2.5 million. That's where the significant amount of numbers were. And when you look at that, and then you begin to consider how much money they anticipate receiving from loans that they have applied for or will apply for. And the reason that this number was important to us was in one of our earlier flash polls, we realized that 52% of those that responded in that kind of range of varying budgets reported that they had only 0 to 3 months in any kind of reserves to continue their work, right? 0 to 3 months. Now, you look at any for-profit business that's out of the startup phase, right? Or maybe that, Death Valley phase. That would not be feasible. In a public company, the board would speak up about that. Stakeholders would speak up about that. But in the nonprofit world, that's almost seen as a badge of honor, right? Like even in some federal grants, as most of you know, if you have too much reserves, you don't qualify for the grant. So, they can weather a hurricane with 0 to 3 months, but a global pandemic, not so much, or anything else that might happen to them as an organization or in a community. So we wanted to get a sense, how are you going to supplement this right now? Here in Southwest Florida, I think Jessica mentioned their survey that showed 80% of their partner organizations were going to not be able to have fundraising events. I think pretty much in our whole region, the majority of fundraising happens through the gala and event-driven pieces of fundraising that are done. So if those are canceled, we're in a global pandemic and we're counting on these nonprofit organizations to be the ones to assist with the end users. Where are they going to go to get additional resources? So you can see here, and if you kind of would go back and compare it with the previous slide, it's about the same numbers and percentages that tie back to that. The larger organizations feel like they're going to get a significant amount of money. And kind of talking about that rule book, the other thing we kind of unearthed in these flash polls is a number of organizations that would absolutely have qualified for PPP or other loans available had a number of things to say. One, our board doesn't believe that we should ever be in debt, right? So this is that thinking that nonprofits don't have any access to capital. There's no access to debt, no real access to a stock market where people can invest in them. And the challenge is a majority of the money that they do have in any kind of reserves can oftentimes be restricted to programming. The nonprofits have been trained that 99 cents of every dollar has to go to programming. So any kind of stash of money that's for salaries or overhead is seen as taboo. And we saw this playing out in this ecosystem because people said, oh, well, we can't take on a 1% loan. What if we can never pay it back? We shouldn't take it. It also got positioned as kind of a moral issue. I was on a call with some state CEOs from around the state of community foundations and other foundations. And it almost kind of took on a moral imperative. Like people were proudly saying, well, we didn't take it. We didn't think it was the right thing to do. And it began to make nonprofits feel uncomfortable about admitting it. Our foundation has been very forthright. We applied, we received it, and we're keeping it, and we're putting it towards the most good we possibly can. We feel that our team being engaged and fully employed and doing the work for the community is important work. We don't diminish that work. And so each organization has a obligation to make that decision on their own. I'm not faulting people for putting it back, but we have to be careful about this messaging that we're putting out there. So if you see this, there's very few that feel like they're going to get those significant dollars or have access to the dollars that they want to get. It was interesting, our county qualified for some of the federal COVID relief fund. And I have to tell you, I spent 2 weeks as they were putting the relief packages together, advocating that nonprofits be included in the small business grant and loan programs, because at first they were not eligible. They were not going to be able to apply for any of the money for PPE, for PPP, all these acronyms, right? But they weren't going to be eligible because a lot of times when I would get into the meetings, people would say, well, they're going to be handled by relief funds and they're going to be handled by their, individual fundraising. And, we had to spend a lot of time really making the case that the only difference is a tax designation, right? They need access to capital in this time of crisis, just like anyone else. And it's going to be no surprise, I think, to anybody that the biggest need that came out of the flash polls, which we could have already told you, was they don't have any money for bills and operating and fundraising, because that's where they were the most scarce to begin with, right? Like, nobody wants to support overhead funding. That's almost like a dirty word, or salaries, or anything else that might smell of interfering with those ratios. So the Community Foundation just has really tried to take on the role of advocating around this. And I think that there is an important lesson here for us to really get our arms around as we move through this. I love the slide that kind of showed the different stages of the impact hitting all the way through recovery. And I think that we need to carry this with us beyond COVID into the future. So we begin thinking differently and acting differently about the way we infuse capital, the way we treat debt, the way we talk to donors, and begin to break down these kind of two different rule books. And I think unless we do that, we are not going to not only be able to conquer COVID, but we're not going to be able to conquer some of the biggest needs that are in our community. The other thing that really came out of these early months of COVID that I think will continue is kind of a lack of a coordinating entity. I kind of equate it to when JFK said that he wanted to see the United States put a man on the moon and get him back by the end of a decade. None of that would have happened without NASA, right? There had to be some coordinating entity that kind of brought everybody together. And I saw particularly in these early days that the light was really being shown on the fact that there's not a lot of these coordinating entities happening in our communities. There are people kind of going in a lot of different directions, all trying to work and solve for the same things. Now, in some cases, there were small pockets of it. A couple of organizations would be talking, but kind of looking at a community-wide or a regional-wide coordinating body is important. This is when the light has really shined on this idea of a flat organizational chart in all of our communities. If you measured it and took all of the different entities working to create change or help in a crisis, you could wrap it around several tractor trailer trucks, and you would understand that there's no way that all of these people are talking to each other. And we're really seeing that. The other finding that I thought was, that I want to point out on this slide is the percentage of respondents that have seen an increased demand for their organizational services. So this is basic, right? We're really working with the nonprofits to stop saying they're growing during this time. They're not growing. For growth, you also have to have revenue growth, right? The need is going up, but the growth of their revenue is not matching that need. And I think in our nonprofit worlds, a lot of times we'll equate growth with the demand of services, but growth really happens when the demand of services and the growth of revenue happens at the same time. And, the bottom line on this last finding really ties back to Jessica's presentation and so much of what we're hearing about the inequity in our communities. And this has really been another place where this flashlight has had to be shined on our community very brightly. But if we don't support this nonprofit ecosystem appropriately, not just during COVID, but from this point forward, these people will continue to suffer. We have to move out of this crisis in a new and different way. And every day I'm greeted with people asking, what can I do to help? Two texts came in while I've been on this Zoom call with you all, where people say, how can I help? How can I help? And I say, donate to the nonprofit organization that you care about and give them the money and tell them they can use it for anything they need, and trust that their expertise and their ability to know their end user will outshine any singular one-off cases when that doesn't happen. So as board members, as leaders, as donors, I just urge you to reach out to the nonprofits that you support. Reach out to the people that you know are leading nonprofits and just say, you know, how can I work with you to get some more operating capital into your organization, not now, but in the future. And the Community Foundation is really taking this opportunity from here forward, not just during COVID. The majority of our grant making will not be programmatic. It will be for operating and fundraising support. We're investing nearly $2.6 million in ourselves to really help get the message out about these inconsistencies and problems we see in the nonprofit sector, to really support the nonprofits in our region to get more of the resources they need so that we can address any of these issues. Thanks so much for giving me the time.
No, this was super interesting. I think you're right. Having the sort of on the ground perspective that Jessica was able to provide, and then with you, the organizational perspective. Let me, we have about 18 minutes before it's 6 o'clock, but let me just kick off the Q&A and just remind everybody, I'm gonna ask a couple of questions and then I'm gonna open it up. But if you would throw your questions into the chat, which is, if you go down to the bottom of Zoom, there's a little, I don't know, box. You just click on it and you can type in there what your questions are, and I'll try to facilitate them for our two presenters. But I wrote down so many questions. Let me see which one. What do you, for both of you really, what do you think is going to be different about the nonprofit sector as we come out of COVID-19? How do you think that it may look different? And Jessica, I'll let you go first.
Okay. So I think Sarah talked about this and made a great point about this. And this has been a bright spot in how we've responded. We have to collaborate and communicate and share our data more. It's more important that we do that and have that true collective impact than ever before. There is no, I don't think there is going to be much room, and I think we'll only be successful if we do a much better job at that. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things. We knew that we had to do that before, but we've had to do that even more now, and that's the only way that we're going to continue to emerge from this moving forward.
I can see that within my own organization. I see some nodding on the screen as well. Sarah, how about you?
Well, I think there is probably some mergers in our future. Yeah. I think I see people more open. At the foundation, we've been really careful. We don't believe in forced collaboration or forced mergers, which I think funders for decades have done, right? Every grant application asks how you collaborate, and we think that these things happen more organically. So we've been putting nonprofit leaders and their teams together in more organic settings during COVID, right? Just times to talk, not teach or, that kind of thing, but for them to spend time together talking amongst each other. And then organically, they discover where those synergies are. And then what we have to be ready to do is to be there and support them, because in the nonprofit sector, particularly, this is true in the for-profit sector as well, but it happens with a little more compassion sometimes in the nonprofit sector, is you start talking about merger and there's fear around that, right? That somebody's going to get cut out or something's going to be lost. So I think as funders and as supporters, we have to help guide how those mergers are good for both sides of the merger and for the people that are there navigating that. So we believe we've had a few reach outs over the last probably 10 to 15 days, starting to want to explore that and having a safe space to explore it. And I think the reality that we're going to have to face that is devastating is some nonprofits are going to be gone, just like some businesses are going to be gone. And I think there's some magical thinking that sometimes gets applied to the nonprofit sector, like somehow someone will come in and, you know, do something. But I do believe with the statistics locally and nationally with this reserves issue, we could lose critical services that we have counted on for a long time. And then some people say, well, good, you know, when you lose them, then you'll see. Well, I don't want it. I don't want it to get to that point, right? I don't want to lose it to see. Let's just talk about it right now and get out in front of it now.
So if I could just do a follow on, I think Sarah has hit the nail on the head as far as merger activity, because I know that I've had organizations reach out to me as well. And if you look at United Way across the US network, 80% of our United Ways are small United Ways that employ one person or maybe even are solely operated by volunteers. So or less than 5, I think, but a large extent of them. And so and there's 1,200 of them across the country. So I do think that that's going to be impacted. To what extent and what that looks like, I'm not sure, but I think we have to have an ongoing dialogue about that. And I also think that there is, because, you know, United Way Suncoast is the merger of several United Ways over the years, and there is still fear with board members. And I think Chris has asked about this, and Mary in the chat. Yes, board training and support and those types of conversations is critical, because I think where the greatest conflict comes is from our board conversations, not the staff teams.
Yeah, I want to build off of that really quick. When Sarah, I think it was you who was commenting that you know, there's sort of a disconnect sometimes where board members, you know, didn't want nonprofits to go into debt. And didn't sort of see the value of that. Yet nonprofits are under this pressure to act more like businesses. So how do you kind of help reconcile that through training or whatnot with board members? And Jessica, you can weigh in as well. It's just an interesting dichotomy of challenges there.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here. I think where this really starts is nonprofits are not able to dream at the level of an Elon Musk, right? We can all applaud Elon Musk and are inspired when he says we're going to colonize Mars, and everybody believes him. But if a hunger organization says we're going to end hunger, that's met with an eye roll, like, yeah, right, sure, you're going to combat hunger. So we don't organize up to big enough dreams, right? And our boards, when we recruit them, it starts with the recruiting. We say things like this: listen, it's not that big of a deal. You know, we only have 6 meetings a year. You don't have to serve on a committee. And don't worry, I know you don't like to ask for money, so you don't have to, right? And then we get a year or 2 in with that board member, and we all, as staff and team, we say, well, that person isn't engaged, because we expect so little. We don't dream big, and our boards aren't conditioned to think in this bold Elon Musk-ish way. You know, we don't compare ourselves to Apple, right? We just think that that's impossible. So first we start there. And then what happens is, you know, you could be running a large business in your community, but something happens in your brain when you sit at that board meeting. You become afraid. What if they find out that we gave the executive director, you know, doubled her salary because she doubled our revenue last year? Like, they're terrified. We spend a ton of time creating nonprofit team member trainings, right? How to write a good grant, how to engage your board more, because they won't fundraise for you, right? And then you go into the boardroom and there's no support. The board controls that budget ultimately. And if they won't approve you taking money from program and applying it to overhead, you're sunk. So a great resource is a gentleman by the name of Dan Pallotta. He wrote the book Uncharitable. He has done huge pieces of work in this area. And what has happened recently is he has created something called Boulder Board Training, where boards come. Our foundation has hosted them now for several years. It has made a dramatic difference. We're starting to see case studies from the boards that come to that kind of training. And this is the training that begins to show the data to the boards about what happens when you invest in fundraising. It shows what happens, and it begins to break down myths. And you just see board members like they all of a sudden come out of a trance. They're like, well, this is how I run my business. This is exactly right. But until the board gets it, I don't think anything's going to change because the board controls it totally.
Jessica, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I just completely agree that our nonprofits are a business. That it's just a tax ID, and we have to operate as such. And the way that we, I think, thoughtfully take risks to have the outcomes that we want to achieve, the way that we embrace and engage our boards, the way that we express our return on investments. And so, I think that, all too often I step into an organization where we don't have dashboards. We're not fully maximizing our strategic plan. We don't have a philosophical approach to how we remain nimble to market and social, community opportunities. And I think I think a business mind and leadership is really important in all of that. Doing good and remaining committed to that good work is the most important thing, but we have to have the strategies and, strengthen our operational excellence to make sure that happens. So I couldn't agree more.
And that takes money, right? Like the reason that happens in the for-profit world is because you invest in that. Yes. You get the data platforms, you have the data guru on your team. I mean, Google doesn't, blink an eye when they have to do a data project.
Right.
But if you're bragging on GuideStar that you spend 99 cents of every dollar on program, I promise you that 1 cent is not going to produce those things. Yeah. It can't. But we're all conditioned that is bad money. You can't do that. You're immoral. You're wasteful. And if you work at a nonprofit, you are just a better person than other people because you're willing to work for a lot less money. You're just a really good person.
So Mary, yes, a lot of businesses that are small don't have those same resources, but I've worked with a lot of nonprofits that are small like that can quickly and easily implement some of these. They don't have to be complicated, and it still can be done.
Go ahead, Linda.
I want. There's some wonderful comments that are being made on the chat, and one of them I'd like to bring attention to is Linda's Oberhaus's comment about the pressure she sometimes feels or criticism about the organization's endowment. And her response is that a nonprofit endowment is not a luxury. It's a sacred responsibility, especially for services deemed critical. And I also think what we're talking about today really speaks to what we have seen, both with COVID and unfortunately with the tragedies in our country. And that is, it requires a systemic response to address these issues. Otherwise, they will continue to marginalize and diminish people throughout the world. So I think there's another priority or importance to this, and that is we're not talking about all nonprofits. There are reasons for different kinds of nonprofits and engagements in communities, but we also have an enormous need, more than ever, to address systemic issues, whether it's racism or poverty or education. It requires a systemic response, which really speaks to the issues of capacity building and impact that we need to provide for our nonprofits and to make those investments. So thank you very much for this discussion. I think it's critically important, and it represents a gift that we can take forward as a result of our experience.
It's been interesting in our nonprofit got the PPP money, and there was as we were sort of like expected to run the marathon while we were figuring out what the rules were at the same time. And there was about a 10-day period where they were talking about penalizing nonprofits who had endowments because the perception was they didn't really need the money. Okay. And so when we talk about sort of like the importance of education, there were some very key decision makers who thought that was a good idea. Now, I don't think that they were talking about the Pinellas Education Foundation. I think they were talking about Harvard. But the reality is sometimes it rolls down to all of us. All of a sudden, this big rule that maybe applies to another kind of organization rolls down to us. And at the end of the day, even in the Harvard situation, we do want them to be fiscally responsible and stable as an organization. I do want to, just because the chat went really, really quick, I want to just roll up, because Jessica and Sarah, I know you've both worked a bit in this space, but Leanne asked a question about, to what extent do you use the research that you've both done? Sarah, I know you do a lot of research in programmatic areas as well. So to what extent do you use research to lobby for policy changes to create long-term changes that are required for gender and racial equity?
Huge. Our ALICE report is probably one of the largest, research efforts that we undertake. Data is critically important to illustrate what's happening, and I guess to provide the proof points necessary at most times to influence those who are making those decisions. So research is everything, and and our data is really important. We have to communicate outcomes and impact, whether that's positive or negative, and research is key to that.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to expand on that at all?
Well, what we've seen really, Leanne, is that the data is the key to communicating with people on this level, because the numbers tell the story, and a lot of times people see nonprofits coming and think it's going to be an emotional expression. And what's been so fantastic about the data, particularly around racial equity, Stacy, this will resonate with you, our College Access Network has been collecting data on primarily on workforce for nearly 7 years now. And what we began to see and what we could then point to with data is, in order to move the number that a whole region, the CEOs of companies, the leaders of organizations, the higher education entities, all agreed we needed to move certain numbers, right, to create a thriving region. So we were focused on that. And then last year, we revealed a very rich data set that showed the only way to move the numbers was to address systemic racism in our community. It ended up on the front page of the paper. I mean, it was big, and it got a huge conversation going about systemic racism. And as we were doing the presentation, initially we had 75 of the champions, which were the C-suite level people sitting around the table, not a person of color at the table, all white people. And so that began a new conversation around equity and unconscious bias that to date in our part of the world was not able to happen. People just would say, we don't have a race problem. We don't have an equity issue. But you look at the numbers and you see those numbers and you see you can't hit your goal without addressing that changes the dialogue.
It's very powerful. Yeah, sometimes you have to deliver a message 10 different ways so that 10 different people hear it, right?
Perfect, yeah.
So we are going to wrap up the webinar, but we have time for maybe one more question. Anybody?
I'd just make an observation, and that is that every nonprofit has a mission that is really important and supports all of their marketing efforts and their donors' willingness to contribute funds. And perhaps what we need to think about are ways to redefine stewardship so that it includes not only those activities that are mission driven, but that also encourage a healthy organization. Because it's wonderful to have a mission that that makes donors and volunteers and employees want to come to work every day. But it's another thing to have to say that part of your mission is to have and support and grow a healthy organization, because without that base, your mission can't be served the way you want it to. So if you can get board members and donors, particularly donors, to think about the fact that that monies that are being contributed to a nonprofit need to both support the mission, but also grow a healthy organization. That's probably the kind of messaging we need to have more of.
But I think you can't do that, and I put a question there, unless, and I was the executive director of a nonprofit, as well as having been a corporate executive for 20 years. You deal every day with the issue of risk and the definition of risk. Are we going to launch that perfume? And if if you're going to lose or it's going to be a winner, you don't think that way in the nonprofit world. Boards don't think that way. There is not, it's the old school fiduciary duty of we're stewards of the funds. And so when there's a new if you want to invest in data, in technology, or I have said for years, I don't understand why a nonprofit doesn't do an annual report, which could get more donors. That becomes an issue. So I think you have to change the paradigm of thinking, and I put it in that risk area. I don't know what you all think, but.
Any comments to that?
No, I do. I think we have to change the paradigm. And I think many times that takes outcomes and data and the way that we're presenting it, the way that we're holding ourselves accountable to our mission and results, and the way that we tie our data to what our mission is, as well as I think the operational excellence of the organization. I mean, I don't know about you, but we track our donor retention rates. All these different data points that we communicate to our board to talk about the health of our organization, and we stay on top of those so that we can improve them. And I think maybe telling more of some of that speaks to maybe the underlying strength of an organization might change the paradigm, like to Fran's point and Janice's point too.
Yeah, and get ready, anybody that has access to media and information in Southwest Florida, because I promise you, once it hits the streets and the paper that the foundation is taking money from their coffers to invest in supporting nonprofits to do that messaging, to creating that messaging so they don't have to do it alone, so they don't have to take the risk. We're taking the risk. I've already been contacted by the paper that they're going to come out and reveal my salary, which is on a 990, which is significantly more than a lot of nonprofit leaders in our region, and my board supports it. Get ready. It's going to be a massacre. Like, our board is getting ready because they know that the minute that hits, I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and say all of it, but that's where I bring it back to the board. The board's got to be ready to take the hit. So they call and say, hey, just want to give you a heads up. We're doing an expose on your salary. And we say, bring it on, because we know that is going to be the moment that message really hits home. But we will lose donors. We will get slaughtered, and you know it. You know we're going to get slaughtered, right? Why are they spending $2.6 million on billboards to promote giving to overhead when they could be giving it to the food bank? But we believe
one of the things
that investment is important.
I do think there's a lot of dynamics that are happening right now. I think there was a bad apple in Tallahassee in terms of the not-for-profits.
Yeah.
That's rolling down in terms of a lot of coverage that the paper had. You really have to ask yourself, how many people are really reading the paper? And if you know that's going to come, how do you do a proactive stance against it? I mean, I'm taking, is anybody taking this USF class that they've offered for free? Fascinating, isn't it, Jessica? I mean, the statistics about Google My Business, which is all searched by me, mobile and video is all, so you can inoculate the attacks. If you know it's coming, get your board members on some 30-second videos as to why we did a video I'm on the Tampa General Hospital board. We did a video for them the first week of COVID. They play it over and over again. I've probably heard from 100 different members of the 5,000 team. So there's ways to inoculate yourselves against the attacks. And I think that it's really important to have dashboards and use data. I think that's the only way that's going to be clear about how you go forward. but I would not sit back and wait for any attack in this day and age. And I also think that there's another whole group of people for potential board members that we just need to go out and find, which are sort of that next generation of leaders, you know, that are coming up in these private equity houses and everybody else, because they are very motivated around these issues in terms of that's a higher priority for them sometimes than their job, frankly.
Yeah, you're so right.
You're right. The private equity and venture capitalists, they're often much more willing to spend on talent, and because they recruit CEOs, they understand how hard that is to do. And just as someone who's been in the nonprofit world forever and trying to hire fundraisers in particular, there's just such a talent void in our field. And so I think part of what your board members need to do is be fluent in the marketplace, which is just fiercely competitive for talent and short in supply. And I'm sure all of you know this, but for years and years, it's been short in supply. So I think, you know, when we fill that pipeline is unfortunately a long time away. So finding someone to do the kind of leadership that Sarah and Jessica offer is almost impossible these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's so impressive what you guys are doing. But the other thing that they said at the USF, one last point, is just they want to hear local stories. You know, people, because of this loss of control of COVID, everyone's looking for ways to fill that control with indulgences, whether it's fitness equipment or ice cream. But the other part of that is that they're really looking for local stories. So you can be a big player, but you can tell local stories. And that's what people are now, they're staying local, because if they look for products or they look for things to fill their vacuum, they're going to local. So be local, but be regional, you know, and be mobile and be on Google My Business. Those are the 4 things I took away from the first 5 hours of this class. Jessica, how'd I do?
Well, when I leave this webinar to go eat my ice cream, I'll take a look.
You're supposed to go to fitness equipment.
I did start running. That has been well, I just want to be respectful of everybody's time and just thank our 2 presenters today. Very much appreciate your time. I know everyone's working really hard, and so an extra job is very much appreciated for IWF. And was there someone going to say something?
Say really well done. I really appreciated hearing this. This is really a great presentation. So
yeah, really interesting. Very interesting.
And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership.
Yes.
Thank you.
And good luck, Sarah, with the
terrific.
Now we're going to be Googling your paper all the time.
Yeah. I'll let you know. I'll let you know. We're ready though. We've got what, like Kathleen described, we're not sitting back and waiting on it. We're ready to rock and roll.
Get out there ahead of it.
Yeah, working on it.
And please, if you liked this webinar, please go out to the IWFSuncoast.org. I know we announced a few webinars at the beginning of this, but all the information and the ability to register is out there, so that Tanya will send you the Zoom information. But thanks everybody for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Stacey.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.